making your mind travel with your hook down to the bottom of the ocean, to me, that's one of the biggest adventure. And it takes a lot of doing to get that insight. But I very much enjoy that expanded consciousness about what is my hook doing down at the bottom of the floor, and what am I doing to lure the fish to bite.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Wild Dispatch. I'm Robin and I'm back with more skills and stories from the wild. Now I'm excited to say we have another aquatic themed episode, and I'm even more excited to say it's with a returning guest, Ejler, the fishing maestro, directly and metaphorically derived from the Viking Age. So he's back and he has far more wisdom to share with us. But before I waffle on with too much praise for Ejler, then I guess first of all, I should thank everyone who's listening. That's both the people who have come along for this whole journey and continue to listen every week, and for anyone who might be listening for the first time today. Also, I want to give a big thank you to all the folks who've left 5-star reviews and said nice things and helped spread the word. The podcast is growing nicely, so thank you for your efforts. And to anyone who hasn't managed to do that yet, but you are enjoying what you're hearing, then I would encourage you gently to pause for a second and leave a quick review or shoot it someone's direction, because it will be a great help. It's just a couple of quick taps and it will make my day. Also, something I'm going to try doing now, as I've got a bit more of an audience, is to reach out to people who might know someone. If you happen to know someone with wild skills and stories, or if you've got thoughts about how to make this podcast better, then definitely get in touch. I've got all my info down in the show notes. I think probably Instagram, just shoot me a message on there. That's the best way to get a hold of me. So that would be super helpful and always appreciated. Right. Now, I've already done quite a bit of heavy foreshadowing in the last episode with Ejler, and I guess I'm going to continue a little bit more now. This episode is up to standard, as you'd expect with Ejler. There are some fantastic stories in here. There's also a bunch of tips and tactics too, which are super helpful if you are even lightly curious about fishing in any capacity. We have tales of great white shark encounters, volcanic whale shits, and even a pet skate. I guess a skate is a type of ray that is over 8 foot long that occasionally visits the boat, which isn't a whole lot bigger. But I'm going to stop stealing Ejler's thunder and let him actually tell his own stories before getting too excited and sharing too much. Here's Ejler.
Welcome to the Wild Dispatch!
Mm-hmm. So, this is, are you growing berries here as well?
Yeah. Yeah, there's red currants, raspberries, and then a little handful of huckleberries. Red currant jelly.
Yum. Oh, that is so good. Oops. So good, I'm wearing it.
Yeah.
Is that someone bringing gifts for you?
I tell you, if I got a dessert like that at a restaurant, I would go and kiss the chef's hand. It's rarely like that.
Yeah.
So I ate at a restaurant yesterday in Fort Bragg. Really not good at all.
That's the predicament of living in Fort Bragg. We have a rating system for Fort Bragg.
And we each had 2 drinks and no appetizers, no dessert, 2 entrees, and with tip it came to $135.
What? That's insane. And the thing that bothers me is that you pay these big prices for food in Fort Bragg, and it's not good.
No.
I feel like it's a restaurant industry built on the knowledge that there will be a constant flow of people passing through. So it never has to be consistently...
It was fucked up bad. I mean, in relation to the price. I mean, the food was mediocre.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad.
Yes.
It was mediocre.
But if you're paying that price...
It better be more than mediocre.
That's what bothers me.
Yeah, my dinner partner said, and why didn't we go to Los Cayitos again?
No, it's true.
I could have eaten 3 tacos for $12. I could have come away from under $20 with a pint of Lagunitas IPA.
No, it's true. So should we carry on?
Where were we?
We were talking about, I believe, the gopher
Oh yeah,
and it going down.
yeah, yeah. We should talk a little bit more about that. I'm gonna bring out my descender rig.
Yes. So, you mentioned gophers in this story. Tell me about gophers.
Yeah, the aforementioned situation where you are clanking your lure right down at the bottom of the ocean and nowhere else.
Yeah.
Jigging right at the bottom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your only audience is going to be the gopher. You don't have any other audience. They are a numerous fish. They are bottom predators. They sit still on the bottom. They are ambush predators. They don't move in to get your. They don't go chasing your bait. And if you're clanking, if you're jigging right on the bottom, you're going to catch a lot of gopher. And if you stay up high, you're not going to catch any.
So that's a top tip. But tell me why you wouldn't want to catch gophers.
Yeah. The name itself alludes to their undesirability. I don't know anybody who has any endearing relationship with gopher on land or at sea.
True.
The gopher, to some, is the most uncharming fish. It has very little meat. There's a lot of head, a lot of gut. And the meat is not really that good. So why fish for gophers? But sometimes you can't avoid catching gophers, and then you got to release them again. Gophers are floaters, if there ever was any. If you catch a gopher on deeper water than 70 feet, it will not go back down on its own volition. It will stay floating, and then here comes the seagull and start pecking at its protruding air bladder. And then it start get a grip in its gill rakes, and then it start tearing it apart, and that's the curtains for the gopher. So, well, then it has been food for a gull, and that's also okay. Sometimes the very presence of a gull will wake the gopher up, and it will make one last dash back home and succeed.
Really?
And succeed. If you're inside of 60, 70 feet, gophers will go back down if you help them along. That means as soon as the gophers come to the surface, you get it off the hook as quickly as possible. And you do that with a firm grip in the lower jaw. As soon as it's off the hook, you give it a somersault in the air, flinging it up in the air a couple feet. It lands with a little bit of an impact, and it immediately goes down. And it's gone.
It's an acrobatic display before dropping down to the bottom.
Did I hear a voice? Did you hear a voice?
I did. Someone saying hello.
Hello! Who goes there? Yeah, so fishing on waters deeper than 70 feet, you are apt to have floating gophers as a result, and it's not a good thing. You know, it's ethically, it's definitely questionable, and aesthetically, having floating gophers around your boat is like, oh, I really don't want to look at that. Reminds me of the dastardly deed I just committed. So it's better to get him back down to the bottom. And so here I bring with me an extra fishing rod, one of my old rods. You know, this one here, which once upon a time was the state of the art of my fishing. It is now the descender rod, the designated descender fishing rod. It's got a clip on it, and so I clip it onto this device here, right here on this loop.
What weight is that? It's a ball?
This is an 8-ounce lead,
Okay.
fairly light.
Yeah.
It will bring down any gopher and china cod, because they don't have more buoyancy than what 8 ounces can't overcome.
Yes.
Then I put this clothespin in the lower jaw. The lower jaw has like a kind of an outer rim with the jaw itself, and then it's got the softer palate inside. Fits perfectly in a clothespin recess right here.
It's interesting. So
Perfectly.
in America, that's called a clothespin, is it?
Clothespin.
I would call that a peg in.
A peg?
Yeah, a clothes peg in England. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
So that goes in the bottom, the jaw, the lower.
Yeah,
half.
the bottom of the jaw of the fish, or the bottom jaw. And you put the fish in the water, and this thing, and set the reel on free spool, and down goes the lead here, trailing the fish behind it,
Taking it
all the way to the bottom.
Yeah.
Then it stops spooling you, of course, and then you like close the spooling, and then you give a good yank, and it comes right off that jaw.
And at that time that it's going down, the swim bladder of the gopher is compressed and it's able to get control of itself again.
And it stays down. Does it survive? Nobody knows. Does it actually work to save the fish? Does the initial travel to the surface through that 80 feet of water exploded beyond repair? I don't know. But I did something.
Yeah, you tried. And I've got to ask, that lead, the 8-ounce lead, it's a round sphere. Is it specifically that? Or is it just what you
Nah, it
happen to
doesn't
have
matter.
left over? It could be anything. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the gopher is an undesirable fish for I mean, not only does it not have hardly any meat on it, it's not really worth eating, the meat that's on it. It also has an awful habit of like emptying itself when it gets into the boat. A gopher is not allowed to come into my boat because it immediately both pukes and shits. Now the puke is okay, it's like starfish and crustaceans from the bottom. The puke is foul, or the shit is foul. It sticks to everything, it's gray, stinks, and it sprays out of the fish. And it just makes the cleaning of the boat a much less desirable affair. So no gopher inside the boat ever allowed. Period. We have a fly in the room.
Yeah, I've noticed. Let's try and get that fly snap. They're getting to that point where the light inside is going to be pulling them in, so maybe we should close the doors and
That's right.
get this fly out of here.
Okay, let's do that.
Because I can imagine, it's alright when they're over here, but here, next to that mic, it's going to be a surround sound moment.
Yeah. So we find the newspaper. Where did you go?
I'll do this and I'll be quiet. Come on, calm down. also... Oh, he's now over here.
Oh yeah.
Get him. Yeah. Yes.
That was one tough fucker. Tough no more. Jeez.
We've had 2 hunts in the middle of this podcast. But the funny thing is, the rabid hunting nature comes out in the both of us. You notice that? Like, there's this patience. It's just the thing that has to happen.
All your equipment still functioning?
Yep. That hunt was captured beautifully. Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Yeah, gopher.
So gopher has a tendency to...
Yeah, shit and puke. Spray, actually. Its feces sprays and just gets on everything. It's just not welcome. And the China cod is not far behind in the same kind of disgusting tendency to just like defecate all over everything. So I don't like China cods in the boat either.
And you don't eat them?
I don't. And you know what? The book says that it's one of the most delicious eating fish. That is just not true. I don't know how it got that reputation. There's some people who say it's a delicious fish. Okay, they can have it. No, China cod. Very, very, very rarely do I take China cod. There's a whole group of rockfish, the Sebastus genus, that are kind of related to each other. There's the quillback, there's the black and yellow, there is the China cod, gopher cod, calico. They're smallish, compressed fish with a large head, a lot of guts, very little muscle. They're all bottom ambush predators. They don't swim around.
Does the cabezon fit in that as well?
Cabezon is a little bit different.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Well, then carry on with the... Well, I thought it was part of it.
None of those fish are desirable.
Okay.
I never take any of them. Right now it's a controversy because the quillback is in that group also. A small, passive, bottom ambush predator. And according to some data that Fish and Wildlife, Department of Fish and Wildlife claim lays at the ground of the decisions, the quillback, the depredation of the quillback population is at the grounds for a complete closure of fishing inside the depth of 300 feet. And that is a very peculiar reasoning for closing down sports fishing inside 300 feet for a couple of arguments' sake. For instance, nobody takes quillback. That's one thing.
Yeah.
Another thing is, if you by accident catch a quillback, the quillback is one of the very few fish, among us a few others also, one of the very few bottom dwellers that does not get harmed by traveling to the surface. It is never a floater, ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They always go down, doesn't matter what depth you catch them on.
Yeah.
They just go down, boom, gone. They can't wait to get out of there, brrr, they're gone. And another thing is, the people who really like quillback are the live fishermen, the fishermen who fish for the live market.
Okay.
In the Asian market in the cities. The closure does not apply to them. The closure to save the quillback does not apply to the only ones who fish for quillbacks. That makes us sports fishermen slightly pissed off.
Yeah. I can imagine.
That the commercial guys are still out there catching bottom fish where we are not allowed to fish.
Any fish.
Any fish.
Yeah.
Oh, we're allowed to fish flatfish. We're allowed to fish for sand dabs and starry flounder and petrale soles, of which there are basically none.
Yes. Hopefully that gets resolved, because it sounds pretty
Yeah, it's insane.
Sounds less than ideal.
Yeah, they're damaging their reputation as being a scientific based agency. There's no science involved here that I can see. If there was science involved, they would approach it completely differently. But that just that could easily lead to a tirade, and tirades are tiresome, so we're not going to go there. The other fish that won't go down is, for instance, the red. But you're allowed to take the red or the vermilion.
There's no minimum size.
No.
Okay.
And another fish that also won't go down is the yellow eye, which you're not allowed to take.
Interesting.
And it takes like 4 pounds of lead to bring it back down because they have a very large swim bladder.
4 pounds.
Yeah, it takes 4 times what I have here.
Yeah.
Which would be something like 40 ounces. So yeah.
Wow.
It's 3 pounds.
I don't think we've ever caught one together.
No, I've never caught a yellow eye.
So thankfully it's not a problem you have to deal with.
No, it's not a problem I have to deal with. But when they open up to fish out into, what was it? They went from 20 fathom to 30 fathom, 180 feet.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, there was yellow eyes floating all over the ocean. So why it's not allowed to take yellow eye, I don't know. Because once a yellow eye is up, a yellow eye is up. It's not going to go back down.
Yeah.
Anything that travels that big of a water column, like 180 feet, they are exploded.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big long way to come up as well.
There's a lot of things wrong with sports fishing regulations. And again, let's not go any further in that direction.
So, I guess then I have a few fish left on my list. I'm sure there were many that I've missed. But the ones that are in my mind, I mean, the ones that I guess edible, like I mentioned cabezone, but we don't really take cabezone too often.
No, I don't take cabezone at all.
And then what's the reason for that?
Well, it has to do with that cabezone. When I started fishing here, I started as a diver. And during the years where I didn't have a boat and I went out with my friend Neil, I spent a lot of time diving from shore.
Yeah.
And when I got my boat, I also dove from my boat, dive for abalone and dive just spearfishing because it's beautiful to be underwater.
Yeah.
And before they opened up the nearshore environment for commercial fishing, the cabezone was the ruler of the ocean floor. I would go down and I would find some sea urchin and I would break them open with my Hawaiian sling, my spear. One over there, 20 feet away, another one over there.
It's like in a triangle or?
In a line.
Okay.
And one over there. And by the time I was done with number 4 or 5 over there, over maybe a stretch of 100 feet, I would come back to the first one, there would be a cabezone moving in. Maybe 2, maybe 3. From 3 different directions.
Looking to snack on the leftovers.
Yeah, they're the first ones. They're not the first ones. The first ones is the sea trout or the kelp greenling. They're the first ones on the scene. But I don't take those. They're not that good eating. Because they're also painfully beautiful. Beautiful little fish. But the cabezone, that's a good eating fish.
Okay.
And so I would come home with a couple of cabezone, and that was always the goal. And I could pick which one I want, that one, or maybe none of those. Maybe I'll go to the next urchin and see what goes on there. No, let's go. So once I've seen them all, it's okay, I'm going to take that one. But the cabezone were everywhere on it. In an area like that here, there could easily be 24 cabezone.
Wow.
An area the size of the shop.
So what's that? What's the dimensions of your shop?
Yeah, well, it's 1,000 square feet more or less.
Wow.
800 square feet.
Yeah, that's a lot of fish.
There would be umpteen cabezone. They ruled the place. They were everywhere. Until the live fishermen came in. All of a sudden, no more. None. And also, there was none outside either. Out on deeper water. They got very, very scarce. So now I only catch like maybe a handful a year, and I let them go.
Yeah.
I can't justify taking them.
They're very old fish, aren't they? Or am I
Uh,
mistaking them for another fish?
yeah, you're mistaking them for the quillback, as a matter of fact.
Oh,
It's
have
one
we
of the-
caught quillback?
Have we?
Caught quillback.
I believe we have.
Oh, maybe that's what it was then. Or maybe I'm mistaking.
And quillback is probably the longest lived of the rockfishes. Can live to be about like 140 years old.
Wow.
And doesn't get sexually mature until like it's 40 years old.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it's still just yay big, you know.
Yeah. So the cabzone is actually a great eating fish, but because of its low, or because of its scarcity, you don't take it.
Yeah, I can't take it. I've been traumatized by its complete disappearance in the nearshore environment.
Okay. We'll keep the information about how to find it then to close to our chests for that purpose.
Yeah.
So what about let's talk about the salmon. Actually, no. Let's talk about canaries. We talked about canaries.
Yeah, no, we haven't. Canaries is a deep water fish. That means it's rare to catch a canary on any shallower than say 80 feet. Although it had happened a couple of years ago, for some reason they came in on shallow water, and I have no idea why that was.
Yeah, I remember. We caught a few of them, didn't we?
Yeah.
So how do they behave? They like to hang around deeper water, but
They like structure, and they are a gregarious fish. They always they're never solo. They fight over their weight class. It's a beautiful fish, and the meat is very well tasting. It's one of the finest eating fish. Beautiful meat, really good tasting. Smokes really well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. And how do they? So you said it punches above its weight. So when you get a hit with one of them or like a bite, it's a big bite.
Yeah, you think you have a fish that's much bigger than it really is.
So what is the common mistake that you might think that? Well, I mean, I'm not saying you would mistake a canary for anything else, but
Actually, it's so unusual that I don't catch a whole lot of canaries, right? Some years I do, but most of the time it's just a handful a year.
yeah.
That it's one of the hardest fish for me to identify because I don't recognize it. What do I have on? Sometimes if I look around and say, "Oh yeah, I'm here. I'm at the Canary Island." I think I used that expression before.
I remember.
Yeah, there's a certain place where you can go and say, "I'm going to go and catch a canary. We're going to go over there." How the canary knows how to hang out in that particular spot, I have no idea, but that's where they hang out.
So what is that area like? It's structure, but what kind of structure?
It's rocky, but why is that rocky bottom more desirable to the canary than this rocky bottom a quarter mile away? These questions are very hard to answer. There's another species of rockfish called the brown rockfish. It hangs out on just one rock formation that is like so small it's ridiculous. It's like less than a quarter of my backyard. That's where the browns hang out. When we are there, we will catch browns.
Really?
And we'll probably not catch anything else. Isn't that odd?
That is odd. Yeah. So I'm just wondering if there's any other species which, I guess, king salmon.
Yeah, well, there's also olives.
Olives, that's on the list, yeah.
Olives is a kind of a pelagic fish. It means that it swims about in mid-water and away from structure. It doesn't really have much adherence to what goes on the floor.
Okay.
Or pinnacles. It likes rips. It likes the areas where two different currents slide by each other, or maybe a current is running through the ocean like a river and the rest of the water is stationary.
Yeah.
It creates friction between the two layers of water, the standstill water and the moving water, and it creates eddies.
Yes.
And it collects debris, foam, algae, floating planktons, and it makes a food-rich environment for certain species, among them the olive and salmon, and bait fish that they like, such as needlefish, sardine, anchovy, etc.
Okay. So they
That's where you find
hang
them.
out in similar places.
That's where you find the olives. Strangely enough, there are areas out on deeper water at about 300, 320 feet where the olives congregate in colossal quantities on or near the bottom. It's a very strange phenomenon because way out in deep water you find them deep, and in shore you find them in the mid-levels only. Maybe it's a different subspecies. I'm not sure. They don't quite look the same. Maybe the one we're catching out in deep water is really a yellowtail. I don't know. I haven't gotten any final answer to those questions. But they behave and they live in a different environment enough to where I suspect that they might be subspecies of each other.
Yes. And we should also, as this podcast, if you're listening to this podcast, then I will put images of these fish on my Instagram, on the Wild Dispatch, so you can have a quick look. I mean, obviously, if you wanted to, you probably have already looked these fish up yourself already, if you were kind of curious about it. But yeah, if you go on the Instagram, I'll put some images up of all these different fish that we're talking about, just so you have a visual context for them as well. So olives, are they good eating? What kind of size?
They are.
What kind of size are they?
The one you get out on deep water goes up to 5-6 pounds.
Okay.
Rarely do you catch any here that exceeds 3 or 4 pounds here.
Mm-hmm.
They get really chunky when they're out on deep water.
And they don't seem like very common fish to catch. Like
No.
I remember the surprise in your voice at showing me an olive that I think I brought up a olive, and you're like, oh, it's an olive, which to me signified that it was not a common.
That is correct. That's correct. There has been years where there was a lot of olive, but it's very rare actually that happens. There was one year we were rowing along a rip, and my fishing partner said, "I'm gonna trail a lure here, see if there's anybody home."
Okay.
And he immediately got hit. And then I stopped and I threw out my lure, and I immediately got hit, and we got into this incredible bonanza of these 2, 3, 4 pound olives, one after the other, until we said, "Hey, we got to stop this. We got to go elsewhere.
Yeah.
We can't fish like this."
What's the limit of olives?
Well, you can only take 10 rockfish per person.
So olives are fit within that.
Olives are fit within the rockfish group.
Okay.
So if we want any vermilions, we can't have 10 olives on board.
Yes.
20.
Yeah.
We could have. Sometimes we have to run away because the fishing is too overwhelmingly good. We got to stop this, otherwise our fishing trip's going to be over in about 15 minutes.
It sounds like a terrible problem to have, but a sensible choice.
It is. It's a burden.
So, king salmon, we talked about before how to, like the different methods in which to catch them compared to everything else.
Yeah.
But it sounds like they are in a similar area to olives, like you said.
They can be, yeah, uh-huh.
But, yeah, like size-wise, I've seen old photos of enormous salmon.
Yeah.
But they tend to be a bit smaller nowadays, is that right? What's the kind of poundage?
Yeah, last year there was several taken that was like 30, 40 pounds plus.
On your boat?
Not in my boat.
Okay.
I didn't catch salmon on my boat last year. Did I?
I feel like there were some that weren't the legal size. Is there a limit?
Yeah. I think it's 22 inches. Could be 24. I'm not sure. But this year, you weren't allowed to catch salmon at all, so nobody's been paying attention to the salmon this time.
Yeah.
Salmon is notoriously tricky. There are signs that you will convince yourself that this is where you should go and catch salmon. One of them is obviously the signs that there is a presence of bait fish, and that is like birds swarming and diving.
Okay.
You would want to go there. Chances are that there are salmon in the vicinity of this feeding frenzy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always the case, but it is often the case, often enough the case to where you don't want to miss out on that feeding frenzy.
So they're mid-water operating.
They are mid-water. Sometimes they're deep, sometimes they're really high, sometimes they're out on 400-500 feet of water and 120 feet down. Sometimes they're in on 20 feet of water and laying right on the bottom.
Yeah.
That was the case last year down on Manchester Beach, where there's like a bodacious surf and a whole series of very strong breakers that break over sandbars, one after another after another. It's a spectacular area. And for some reason the salmon got right in close to those breakers. And we were trawling right in close to those breakers on 20 feet of water.
Wow.
And catching these enormous fish. Like up to 35 pounds. And when you get a 35-pound fish on and it can't go anywhere but away and up because there's no down,
Yes.
you have a whole different fishing scenario at your hands. It is like a spectacular thing. You know, it runs like shot out of a cannon, and it gets up and out of the water, and it thrashes, and it runs this way and runs this way. Normally, when you're on deep enough water, it takes the hook, and then it does its thing, and it can go up and down in the column, and you have a little bit of a predictability to it. But on shallow water, there's a whole new set of instincts that kicks in, and it is an adrenaline rush.
So you just have to hang on and...
Yeah, you have to keep your cool.
And because it's a barbless hook, you really have to be paying attention.
You absolutely have to just like keep a taut line and keep some pressure on the fish and not too much. And yeah, get it in. Get it close to the boat.
Yeah. Simple.
Simple. Salmon fishing is exciting as hell. There's no two ways about it. It's kind of the pinnacle of fishing around here, you know. It's a noble fish. It's a beautiful looking fish. It's fantastic food fish. Yeah, it's hard not to have any, you know, it's hard not to use superlatives about salmon, the king salmon.
And how good it tastes as well, of course. So I think that kind of, unless there's any fish that we're missing, I'd say it kind of closes it out for the species. The only thing I would say we need to give an honourable mention to is crabs.
Yeah.
Because ultimately there are distinct seasons, and it's definitely a looked forward to moment.
Yes.
When the fishing season opens.
Oh, so very much.
So what's the strategy with crab around here? Ultimately, it's using nets. Is there specific rules about those nets?
Yeah, no, there aren't really. I use hoops. They're open net. It's two concentric rings, one inside the other, of course. The one in the middle is small, and it has within its rim a pocket for bait.
And these are like metal, quite heavy.
Yeah.
Like iron, is it?
Yeah. Yep. And the other one, it's probably about 3 feet in diameter, thereabouts.
Okay.
And so it's kind of like a little bit funnel shaped once it's suspended from its pull up rope. It's like a basket.
Yes.
When it's laying down on the ocean floor, it's flat.
Okay.
It's an uncomplicated and surefire way of catching crab. And it's incredibly entertaining. and rewarding.
So, you were saying, I cut you off, like what bait do you put, like what's the ideal bait to put in that pocket at the bottom?
The ideal bait is fresh fish carcass from yesterday.
Okay.
You fillet your fish, a medium-sized rockfish, a blue or black, and you're keeping the carcass for tomorrow's crabbing.
Okay.
That's the ideal bait.
And if you don't have that, what is there anything else that kind of can be a secondary substitute?
Yes, there is. Anything that you have in the freezer that you have a feeling, I'm never going to eat that. These lamb ribs have been sitting in here for 4 years. Why not try a lamb rib? Why would a crab want to eat lamb rib? I don't know. I know that crabs really, really like pork ribs. Why do they like pork ribs? How could they ever get a taste for pork ribs? Good question. I know that they're not that fond of chicken.
Okay.
Or like turkey. Turkey necks is the cheapest meat you can buy.
Yeah.
Why not use that for bait? Yeah, it's because the crab doesn't really care much for turkey necks. But on a good day, a crab doesn't really give a hoot. They will be attracted to anything. I took some people fishing for crab in the Albion River. A family came over from Denmark and they had kids, and so we were 3 adults and 2 kids on board my boat. And the Albion River is a wonderful river, and that's a good place, a couple bends up. And we had sandwiches and picnic gear, chips, drinks, and bait. Bait was the bait. Oh God! The bait is at home sitting in the sink.
Ugh.
The bait was some fish fillets from last year that were getting a little old in the freezer. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But they're sitting at home, so we had no bait. What are we going to do? Okay, these sandwiches that we had were enormous. So we took one sandwich and we cut it into smaller pieces.
Yeah.
And then we left it in the wrappers. We used the wrappers from the other sandwiches to wrap it. It was like wax paper.
Mm-hmm.
To wrap them, and then we poke holes in the wrapper so that the scent would come out, but the sandwich wouldn't be like readily accessible because the crabs would just tear it to pieces and eat it in like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So we wrapped up, we cut the sandwich into 4 pieces because we had 4 crab traps. Wrapped it in sandwich wrappers, poked hole in it, put it in the bait pocket, and dropped it down. We came home with 4 crabs.
Brilliant.
So, is there any other choices than fresh fish? Yes. Whatever you got. Yes. Anything goes.
Brilliant. Well, there you go. So you're saying about putting the traps down in the river, like an estuary kind of area.
Yeah.
But is there any rules about like depth of water,
No.
surface? Is it better on sand or
Sand
rock?
only.
Better on the sand.
Only sand.
And so even in the estuary of a river or like further out, because we fish for crabs like out in the like the shallower parts of the ocean as well.
Yeah.
Haven't we? So no particular rules about where.
No, just sand.
Make sure it's sand.
Sand. Yeah.
Because if it's on rock,
No zero. No go. All you catch is rock crab. You don't want those. You don't get Dungeness crab on rock bottom. Nope.
okay.
Only sand.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, there you go. Yeah. That concludes our species section. So, how are you doing in terms of good, like energy?
Yeah.
You all good?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because we've got a few more things we could talk
Yeah,
about.
am I being still lucid?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good.
If you're happy, but also, I'm also more than happy I'm aware that it's late.
Yeah.
So I don't feel like you have to do anything on
What
my
is it?
part.
Oh, it's 7 o'clock. Ooh.
It's 7, yeah. So
Time flies when you're having fun.
it does. Yeah, we probably started 6.5 hours ago. I mean, we've had little breaks here and there.
Yeah, I think we were genuinely started at 12:30.
Okay. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So, what I'm wondering about is like this. I don't think we need to talk about processing fish now. I think that could be a whole other episode, another day.
Yep.
The only other thing I was thinking that we could talk about a bit is things about reading the ocean, general stuff about being out on the water.
Yeah.
Does that sound okay? But also, you don't have. I feel like I'm like slave driving you right now. So,
No, we can talk about that. I mean, when a rowboat is your only means of getting out on the water, you get a different relationship to the water than when you have a motorboat. Because you're relying on your own physical strength for propulsion. It's akin to being on a kayak. You have a totally different relationship to the ocean if you're on a kayak. You're much closer to the ocean. It's much more of a commitment. You're much more like locked into your vessel. Rowboat offers you a lot of freedom. There's ample accommodation. You can bring more beer. You can have a good time. You can relax. You can. It's a good place to be. To me, a rowboat is the ideal fishing vessel. It has what some people would say one big limitation, a setback, and that is its limited action radius.
yes,
You can only row so far.
exactly.
Yeah, that is true. However, I am in that very lucky situation that where I fish, there is no other fishermen because it's too far from other put-in harbors.
What they call slip
Yeah,
roads.
launching ramps.
Yes.
There's Albion to the south, to the north, and there's Point Arena to the south, and I'm in between. So you got a motor like 10 miles in that direction or 10 miles in that direction in order to get to Elk, where I fish.
Yes.
And that means that my place is never really under that much pressure. And so I don't need a lot of action radius. I have maybe a 5 square mile zone that I traverse.
But it's interesting you say that. And you make this point because I was going to ask you about the difference between, using a rowboat or a self-propelled vehicle and a motorboat and that radius. But it also seems like what you're saying is it's good that you don't, you have a great resource there that you're able to tap into within 5 miles, but it feels like also having a good understanding of your surroundings, the ocean, reading all of the information that's available to you means that you can make smart choices. Because if you have a motorboat, you can make poor choices and then make corrections based on that. Whereas you've only, as you said, you've only got a limited amount of energy, power, time before perfect conditions change. All those things you can't quickly adjust for any. Well, there's some scope for it, but you don't have the same flex to adjust on mistakes, right? Which requires a lot of understanding, and that's kind of a part of this conversation which I wanted to ask you about. Like, I see you when we go down to the ocean, and I see you looking at the waves and judging things silently in your mind, and I can see that there's some kind of supercomputer interpreting and understanding all kinds of things that I have no chance of yet understanding. And I guess that's what this conversation was going to be about, is that I'd love to just hear some of that thinking. And in a way, I guess, choosing to use a rowboat has forced that knowledge, forced you to have that understanding. Is because otherwise, if that sounds right, like if you don't make the right choices, you go home with less fish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It's true. It's a very complicated analog mishmash of information that has to be sorted out. And if you don't know how to sort it out, you don't really see anything because it's information overload. You can look at the ocean and say, "I don't see anything."
Yeah.
Well, that's not true. You just don't know what you're seeing. So there's no way I'm going to go on the water without having a good feel for what is coming at me.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't always like that. When I started out as a rowboat fisherman in elk, I didn't know what I was seeing. I didn't have that relationship with the ocean to be assured. I was scared shitless for years going on the water.
Scared of what?
Because I didn't know what I was seeing.
Yes.
I didn't know what to expect.
What the potential was.
Right. I didn't know what forces I was really reckoning with. Scared of the unknown.
Yes.
Scared because I didn't know what I was looking at. I can see, but I don't know what it is I'm seeing. When you're a landlubber, which I am of birth, it takes a long time to establish a comfortable relationship with the ocean and its ever-changing nature. Well, first of all, there's the simple act of launching and landing. Launching, you are going against the waves. The waves are coming at you on a beach. Sometimes it's breaking, sometimes it's not. Why is it breaking when it's breaking? How many waves are not breaking before the next set of breakers come? If you can't figure that out, you can't really launch a boat in the surf. You have to stand, look, find the rhythm, and then you can say, I know what I'm doing.
So
once you can say, I know what I'm doing, then you can launch.
Yeah.
But until you can say that, you really can't put your boat in the water. Because you need to know what's coming at you. The ocean is in ever-changing conditions. The wave that just hit the shore will never hit that shore again. The next wave is brand new and different. And wave number 70 from now on is going to be a towering, boat-crushing power punch. Is it number 70? Maybe. Maybe it's number 60. Maybe it's the number 12 from now on. But there is a rhythm. There are many rhythms on the ocean.
Okay.
On the short interval, you can say there's a lull of 4 waves and followed by 3 breakers. 4 wave lull followed by 3 breakers. Now it's like only 3 lull and 5 breakers. But there is some kind of a rhythm that you can pretty much count on and see from the outer rocks and from the profile of the waves that are coming at you, which ones are going to cause trouble.
Yes.
And so you launch in the window that the ocean offers. If that window is not there, you don't launch, you go home.
Yeah. So that explains why I've seen you do this, and I know that you at times in the morning will go down and actually just watch the ocean for quite some time before deciding whether to fish that day or not.
Right.
But I've got to ask, you're saying like wave number 70 or wave number 60 is a boat crusher.
Yeah.
Do you mean in terms of like the 60th wave of a set of waves? Is that right? Or just a random number, is that what you meant?
Yeah, it is a random number. It's not a random number to the ocean. It's a random number to our observation. But there is a very complex set of wave interference that goes on within the ocean itself. Big, small.
Yes.
Big, small.
Yeah.
And then big and small. Why? Well, it's all those waves that come into harmony maybe and it rises up.
Absolutely.
Wave physics is complex.
And it's the same with sound waves, right? Like that's why
It
you
is.
get these strange moments. Why sound cancelling headphones work. It's the
That's
opposite
right.
principle of why sometimes when waves double up at the right moment.
Yeah, amplification and interference and all of those things play in. And that's why all this talk about sneaker waves,
Yes.
those are real. That's wave number 70. I say wave number 70, it's a concept that once in a while, within the predictable rhythm of the waves of the ocean, there's going to be some big wave that's going to cause damage.
Yes.
somewhere. You can be sure that that's going to happen.
And so, waves is definitely a factor that takes time to understand and read and interpret. Something which I
Yes, it does.
continue to aim to do. And I'm much more aware now than I think I was in previous years. In the sense that when I would arrive here for a fishing day, you would often ask me, what's the ocean doing on the drive down? And the funny thing is, when I first started fishing with you, I hadn't even looked at the ocean, you know? And the strange thing is now, 3-4 years on, I can't help but always look at the ocean. And it doesn't matter if I'm going fishing or anything.
Yeah, right.
I'm always observing because I'm curious about what the waves are looking like. So, yeah, I have you to thank for that.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. And then there's the fog visibility plays in, because you want to be able to see what's coming at you. If you have a fog bank that's hovering about a quarter mile offshore, you can't really see what to expect coming at you. A quarter mile is traversed by a wave in time span of about 1 minute.
Yes.
And if you don't know what's coming at you 1 minute into the future, you don't have a chance to really gauge if you have a window big enough to launch. So that plays in. How far can you see out to see what's coming at you?
Yes.
So visibility is definitely an issue if situations are marginal.
Yes.
If they're not marginal, then
Don't worry about it.
no.
So is there anything else in the kind of launching process, getting the boat from the shore into the ocean through the breakers?
Yeah.
Is there any other part of that which is good to know?
No, that's really the easier part to launch, to come home, to come back to the shore. That's much trickier,
Right.
and that's where things sometimes get pretty exciting. And you really have to time it and catch the right wave and hit the right spot on the beach, and it's really fun. It's a lot of fun. You got to commit. You know, once you commit, there ain't no way back, man.
You just gotta go.
You gotta go. You gotta go. You can't back out of this one.
So make your choices, stick to them, and hope for the best.
Yeah. Put some pedal to the metal. So the fact that I operate out of a rowboat, which gives me this limited action radius of approximately 5 square miles thereabouts, that means that I get to know this area better than anybody else, right? Like my father used to tell me, yeah, you know, we live and die here on this farm, but I can tell you it's only 120 acres, but nobody knows these 120 acres better than we do.
Mm-hmm.
That's a kind of a peasant philosophy involved with that. We may not get around very far in the world, but nobody's going to know this little part of the world better than we do. And it's the same with where I fish. But it's not just like the fishing in the bottom, because I know the bottom very, very, very well. I have a good sense for where the fish are when, but I also have a sense of what's the condition on my beach, based on what I can hear from up here, based on from NOAA's information on the internet as to what is the direction of the swell, what's the size of the swell, what's coming and what has been.
Yes.
It doesn't tell the whole story, because just like with climate, there are pockets where the climate is totally different. The top of Cameron Road here is one thing. The bottom of Cameron Road towards Highway 1 is a totally different climate. But there's no weather forecast that's going to be able to detail that. It's the same with ocean conditions, because the rocks, the outcropping in that direction up north catches a certain set of waves that comes from a certain direction and stops them cold. so that they don't reach my beach.
Yes.
But if it's 10 degrees further west, they skirt that point and have a straight shot at my beach. And if it goes 40 degrees further west, almost due west, they run into another wall and nothing hits my beach. So if the wave trajectory is within this 60-degree window, my beach is exposed. And if I know where the ocean swell is coming from, what the travel direction is, I can predict with great certainty. Doesn't matter what the conditions are up at northern Navarro, up by Albion, Little River, Fort Bragg. It's what goes on here that matters to me.
Yeah.
And I get, in the beginning of the fishing season, I have tuned out what's going on in the ocean, but it only takes me about a week of observation and information gathering to get the picture back. Mm-hmm. But it takes about a week for me to do that, in order to like get back in tune with the ocean, where I know what's going on. I know what's going on yesterday, today, tomorrow, the next day. I have a very clear picture of what's happening.
So I guess that's inspiration to anyone that has a local fishing area that they like to take their kayak or their boat or anything to take a moment when you're out there and observe the weather and think about what the ingredients are and why that is creating the weather and the greater structures around you, and think about the impact that those structures are having. Because I think if you then force yourself to start thinking about that evidence, in case exactly what you are, case in point I should say, that you can start to read things in a better, clearer way and know when the good days are going to be.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, that's something which I can only aspire to to continue to work on, for sure. So, some other things that I wanted to ask you about. I mean, we've covered quite a lot of these things through our conversation now, but I would say presence of other animals that are not the rockfish, you know?
Yeah.
Because you are present on the ocean, you are a guest.
Yeah.
And you are there taking multiple rockfish and other fish. But I guess you've got to be aware of what's going on around you, not just in the fish sense, but like other animals. And I've seen amazing encounters, and I've heard even more amazing encounters that you've experienced. And I guess it's just like, the question is things like birds, reading like the birds, whales, sharks, dolphins, porpoise, sunfish, you know, skates, all those things. I just love to hear about all that stuff, because it's also, those moments are like informative and great moments, but they're also kind of moments you remember when you're out fishing, right?
That is for sure. Some of them leaves an indelible memory residue that never ever leave your spine, because it's bone chilling. Like, encounters with sharks are never without a long-lasting effect.
Can you tell me about one that springs to mind?
Sharks are of such a sinister presence. People can speak in friendly terms about how sharks are really like compassionate beings, or whatever. I mean, I think it's hardwired into the humans that sharks will kill you, because and there's a few other animals that will have the same reaction to you, and you know, snakes is one of them, and some people towards spiders. This is not unusual at all. Deer have a built-in fear of cats.
Do they?
Absolutely.
I guess that's...
A fawn will look at a house cat and be scared to death. And there's no way that they'd learn that.
Yeah.
No way. And I think that when we see a shark, we're scared to death.
For a good reason.
For a good reason. Your fantasy immediately takes a galloping, like, panic ride into fear kingdom of you know, panic. It just goes panic. Fight or flight, right? It's that adrenaline taking over the body type of situation. It's a rare thing to have happen encountering the natural world, and it's a privilege to be that close to a scary animal and come home and tell about it. You know about that. You have had an encounter with a mountain lion. I'm sure it caused a certain release of certain hormones in your body that you remember still.
Yeah, for sure. So, what was the biggest shark encounter that you had that sticks to your mind?
Yeah, there was an interesting fishing trip. I think we're talking probably like early 90s. And I used to take a fishing trip with the local fire chief once a year. We'd be sitting out there, shoot the shit, local politics and all of that. He used to be a lifeguard down in Hermosa Beach in LA. Mm-hmm. And as such, he's seen it all. And we're sitting out there, it's a glassy day, the ocean is like greasy flat, there's not a wind stirring. It's just serene, beautiful. The fish weren't biting, which often happens, by the way, under those conditions. For some strange reason.
There's just no fish.
Yeah, fish are laying low.
For a good reason.
What are they on the beach? Taking a vacation?
Getting a suntan.
Well, I'm not eating today. So we're sitting there and I see a shark fin rise out of the water. About maybe 100 yards away. And this is not something you see very often. Oftentimes the ocean doesn't allow you to see that because it's too disturbed. You only see creatures like that when you're close, really up close.
Yeah.
This was 100 yards away. Had it been a disturbed normal ocean, you might not have seen that. Mm-hmm. But this was like a mirror. And everything that broke the surface, you'd see instantly.
Yeah.
And this shark fin came out of the water without a doubt, a shark fin. So I'm saying, Charlie, look at that. That is an enormous shark. And Charlie said, oh, I've seen them bigger than that. You know. Yeah, well, I haven't. I mean, holy Moses, look at that. And it was like, it was standing out of the water like 1.5 feet.
Really?
But then it came out of the water like 2 feet out of the water.
No.
And then it came out of the water like 2.5 feet out of the water. And then the tail came out of the water. Way over there.
How far was the tail tip from the fin?
We got a very good gauge of that. Because Charlie said, oh, I haven't seen him that big, you know. And then there comes a moment, should you get the hell out of there? Then Charlie says, you know, we should get closer.
So wait, what boat were you in at this point?
In my rowboat.
In the rowboat?
Yeah,
in the 20-foot
in the
dory.
Valkyrie, yeah, in 20-foot rowboat. He said, we should get closer. We'll never get a chance to see a creature like that ever again. This is sensational. Because it was just like so humongously large.
Yeah.
So I decided to follow his advice and row towards the creature. And we were only really able to keep up with it. It was kind of swimming away lazily. Mm-hmm. But we described to each other what we saw. First, Charlie described it to me, what he saw. And then I described it to him, what I saw. That way, we leave a verbal impression in each other's minds and ourselves by expressing it, and by hearing it, what we saw, and we can repeat it when we come home. Like the shape of the tail, the notch of the tail, the shape of the dorsal fin, the height of the dorsal fin, the distance from the dorsal fin to the tail. And we gauged that at over 12 feet.
Wow.
We didn't dare say more than that because it looked so impossible. But we said it was at least 12 feet. We thought it was more than 12 feet. So we say 12 feet.
That's huge.
Then at some point, the fish decides that it has had enough of our pursuit and it just swims on south. And we're sitting there looking at each other. Holy crap, that was an enormous fish. Okay, we said, there's only 2 fish this size. There's only 2 possibilities. It's either a basking shark or a great white.
Yeah.
So now we're going to go home and now we're going to go through reference books. So we did. Came home, we came up to his house. He lives downtown Elk. Come up to his house and we looked at reference books. There was no doubt it was a great white. But not a basking shark. And then we saw the distance from tail to dorsal fin and relative to the total length. And we came to the conclusion that the shark was in the neighborhood of 24 feet.
Really? Because of the distance?
That's the distance from this wall to that wall.
That's enormous. Wow. That's longer than the boat.
Yeah.
So, I guess in this, tips about fishing, if I were to ask you about other animals and how to behave around them, if you see a giant great white shark, you could row towards
Row towards them to get a closer look. That's a brilliant idea.
Is that the advice that you would suggest to other people now?
I think great whites make you crazy. It makes you do crazy things. They're just powerful, hypnotic animals.
And it's definitely clear if there's a fight or flight reaction that it definitely wasn't flight that occurred that day.
No, it wasn't. It's a crazy reaction.
That's wild, man.
It's a follow-up to that story, and that is that I stopped by a local park ranger on my way home, and I said, listen here, Kevin, we had an encounter with a great white, and it was this big. And he just looked at me and he says, no, that was a basking shark. I say, yeah, well, you can say whatever you want, okay? But if a diver is eaten here tomorrow, I wash my hands.
Yeah.
Now it's on you. Oh, yeah. Well, I have no doubt it was a basking shark because great whites don't get that big. Yeah, fine. Okay, sure. So the next day I went out with a friend of mine, Jane. Have you met Jane?
Yes.
Jane's an old friend. She used to be a park ranger also. She lives here on Cameron Road. I took her fishing the next day with her son, who was about 8 years old. And I told her about the shark, and she was very, very excited about it. And while we're out there, we see something bobbing in the water, and it's a pinniped. And there's a seagull sitting on it. So we row up to it, and it was a sea lion, a Steller sea lion, full-grown female, with a shark bite around its upper torso, around the neck. And it was a perfect shark bite with a perfect row of teeth, Mark. And then the whole back strap from shoulders to butt was cleanly removed. Like, I'm just going to eat filet today. Totally cleanly removed, scraped down to the ribs. And Jane said, wow, there's a chance, a shark would lose a tooth doing that because they lose their teeth. They're embedded in cartilage.
Yes.
They break off, and there's some new ones always being born.
Yeah.
So they're used to losing teeth. So here, you got to picture this. Jane leaning over the side of the boat with her hands in a carcass. The flesh is still red, fresh.
That has recently been eaten by
a shark. So she has her hands buried in the flesh of this pinniped, searching for shark teeth. I mean, what a sight. She didn't find any. But then we looked at the bite imprint on its upper neck, on its neck. Because that is a seasoned shark will do exactly that. They are vulnerable. They don't want to fight with a sea lion. Sea lions are exceedingly strong animals. So they do a death bite let go, swim away. The victim bleeds out, it comes back and can eat in peace.
Yes.
That's why, humans get bitten by shark and the shark let go.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
It's just an impact.
They bite, they let go, and then they come back. We took a measurement of this bite imprint. We took a measurement of the distance between the teeth,
Yeah.
from jaw to jaw.
Yes.
And we took a measurement of the distance of the row of teeth and the width of the incision. Then I called up a fellow from Monterey Bay Aquarium. Greg Grantham was his name, shark expert. And I fed him that information. I said, does that translate to a certain size? He says, well, I'll let you know. I'll give you a call in a little bit. Then he called back about an hour later. He says, this is almost impossible to believe because the shark, according to your measurement, according to your information, that shark should be 24 feet long. And there has never been a reporting of a shark of that size. Ever. A great white, or never ever a great white.
On the coast?
Ever. Anywhere.
Oh, really?
Anywhere. The biggest confirmed great white was like in Cuba in the 40s of 22 feet.
Yeah, that's wild.
So he says, it's not that I doubt your information, but we can't. This is not a confirmation of the shark size. That doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. I say, well, how does it work then? How do you get confirmation? Well, you got to do like they did in Cuba. They got to catch and kill the shark.
You got to get the shark.
Yeah, right. Well, that's not going to happen.
It's a shame, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Just
Who in the world would do that? Well, the shark swam south. It was on a southbound trajectory. It kept the course, and 2 days later it arrived at Salt Point, which is about 80 miles down the coast, south. It so happened that there was a game warden out fishing that day in his aluminum skiff, a 20-foot aluminum skiff. The shark comes by, and he sees it, and he motors up to it, and he follows it. He's right next to it, and he can see the length, and it's 24 feet. And then the shark disappears, and he never sees it again. So it was verified.
And that was enough of a verification.
It wasn't enough of a verification. It will never make into the books.
Oh.
Oh, by the way, as an aside, after me and Jane and her son Justin encountered that sea lion out there with the bite marks,
Yes.
I made another stop to the park ranger's office on my way home. I said, you won't believe what your basking shark did today. And the next day he posted a warning at the state park down there.
Good.
He had to succumb to facts.
Yeah. Yeah, that's madness. So, in general, sharks, you just don't, they're magnificent creatures, but the sight of them is a blessing. Don't really worry too much about them. It's not.
No, they always give me a jolt to panic whenever I see a great white.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple. I was out there with Todd one year, and this 12, 14 foot great white swims right under the boat. And we both see it.
You see it go.
We see it go under, and as it glides under, it turns sideways and give you the eye. It's like, wow, man, I can't believe that happened. And it's like what Robert Shaw says in the movie Jaws. The cold, dead eye of the great white. And it is true. It is this flat, black, expressionless, evil little point. It's hypnotic.
It sounds terrifying.
And then the shark swims under the boat, swims away, makes a U-turn, and comes back. And swims under the boat again. And does the same thing.
He needs to look at you with his good eye.
Jeez. That was crazy.
Yeah. So have you had any other moments which are like scary moments, interactions with animals? I know that you've had a lot of close encounters with whales.
Yes, yeah. When you're really up close and personal with a whale, then you'll never know where it's going to surface. You're sitting on a 1/4-inch piece of plywood between you and the ocean, and you're not gonna. It's not going to end well if the whale touches you.
If it's coming up just to get air, or even if it's breaching is the other thing it could be doing as well. But I don't know if that's what they do in the area where you are. But.
No. Well, no. These are grey whales. No, they don't come straight up
don't jump.
like that. And usually the water is too shallow for them to do that.
Yes.
They have to have a kind of
Momentum.
a long momentum to do that. But just because it dives down and does its job on the bottom of the ocean, which is where they get their feed, you never know where they're going to come up. Where are you going to come up? Where are you going to come up? Oh my God, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? You just can't. You can't shake that feeling.
So there's not really a plan. If you see a whale and it's active very close to your area, do you try and get out of the area?
What can you do?
You just hope for the best?
Yeah. I've been as close to a whale like from me to you.
What, that's 4 feet, 3 feet?
4, 5, 6 feet. Sure. Right next to me. Right next to me. Comes up, takes his breath, goes back down. And once, this was memorable. We were right next to it, like from here to the wall. It's like 20 feet away. This grey whale comes up. It's been diving a few times in the area where we were fishing, me and Bruce Hart. You know Bruce Hart?
I do, yeah.
And it comes up and they do a series of breaths before they go back down, before they dive for feed.
Yeah.
And it's always like, it entails the flukes come straight up out of the water and goes down vertically. And just as it was doing that, it took a dump. I am such a privileged person to have experienced this, because it's really impressive. And it was so close, and it comes out like a fire hose, right? It's an enormous turd.
So how close were you again?
From here to the wall, which is like 15 feet away.
15 feet away.
Yeah. Comes up, has its hindquarters as high out of the water as it can possibly have, and at that moment it takes a dump. It just comes out of there, this grey porridge. Just comes, like, I can't even describe it. It's so fucking funny.
Just like violent force of a fire hose.
Yeah, a fire hose, a fire hose that was 10 times the diameter of a fire hose, right?
Oh. Like you're holding a circle 2 feet across.
Yeah, right. It was just impressive.
And was it heading in your direction?
No, it was going down. No, the shit? No,
Yeah.
it's right parallel with us. It wasn't going in our direction.
That's lucky.
But it laid a cloud of whale shit in the water, It was really impressive. The ocean turned grey right there. They're mud eaters, and they basically digest mud. And get the nutrients out of it, and then they discard the rest.
Yeah.
So that's what it was. Whale feces, grey whale feces, is basically mud.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I've seen a whale taking a dump. I don't know how many people can say that. Very, very few.
Lucky you.
Oh, I know.
What did it smell of?
It smells like shit.
Aquatic shit, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's hard to describe smells with words. It wasn't particularly bad, because you never ever experience, or you don't expect feces to smell good ever. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't any particularly bad. It was just, it smells like shit. And a lot of it.
A giant shit.
A giant shit.
So I've got to ask, and it seems like the recurring theme, because in my head I was like, oh, maybe we could do a section about, what's the best way to react to these different animals. But in general, the impression I get is when you are out on the ocean in a small vessel that is self-powered, you are a little more just at the mercy of Poseidon, as you would describe. the decider of your fate. So really, you can just sit back and enjoy the show, and
That's right.
and hope for the best.
That's right.
So then I'd say there's actually a couple of other things that I wanted you to talk about, because you've mentioned them to me before, and I thought that they were cool stories. I mean, recently this fishing season, you had some encounters with I can't remember the word that you used, but
Mola?
sunfish, Mola.
Yeah, Mola Mola is the Latin name, the sunfish.
Yeah.
So named because they often spend time on the surface of the ocean just laying there and wafting one of its fins kind of lazily. And when you see it, first time you see it, what is that? Is that a shark? No, that's not a shark. What is that? No, it's the fin of the Mola Mola.
And how would you describe that fish? Because it's a very unusual shaped fish.
It is a very unusual shape. It's as if you took a fish and cut it off right behind the dorsal fin and left the tail out, sewed it back up and put a little like sail-like fin on it, maybe the quarter of its body length and stretching from the top of its back to the bottom of its belly. So it's fairly flat compared to its height and its length.
Yes.
But otherwise, it is almost like square in shape.
But almost just like a giant swimming fish head.
Giant swimming fish head. Yeah. a highly unlikely shape for an aquatic creature.
Doesn't seem very efficient.
Doesn't seem very efficient. Very slow. Very docile. Clearly does not taste good. Clearly is impossible to eat for sharks, because if sharks liked Mola Mola, Mola Mola would be extinct tomorrow. Because they are just like laying there and doing nothing. And then once in a while they eat some jellyfish. Have a tiny little mouth, no teeth. There's a really big eye that is very like intense, staring at you. They're very curious. They always come to the boat.
Do they?
They come to the boat to check you out. What are you? What are you doing here? No, I think I'm leaving again. And they vary greatly in size. I once caught one and took it home and ate it.
Okay.
Just because. And it was a small one. It's the smallest I've ever seen. Fit in my net. I thought it was a small one. It actually ended up weighing almost 50 pounds.
Wow, one fish.
Yeah, but it wasn't bigger than this.
So what dimensions would you say? That's like 2.5 feet by...
It wasn't 2.5 feet. It was more like 1 foot by 1.5 foot, something like. No, 2 feet by 1.5 foot.
Yes.
Thereabouts.
Okay.
It's surprisingly heavy.
That must have been a big day carrying it up, because you've got to go up a big flight of stairs that go straight up a
Yeah.
cliff.
Yeah.
Probably 100 and something feet of elevation.
Yeah.
And that's plus your your catch for the day.
Yeah.
So that must have been a 2-trip.
And gear. No, we don't do 2 trips. Just go slow.
That was a big day of carrying up there.
One step at a time.
So what happened? You got this fish in the net. You decided to catch it, and you tried to eat it.
Yeah, I ate it.
But how was that experience?
Well, there's 2 answers to that, and one is that I butchered the fish, and it's a very unusual fish. It's very it's difficult to cut into because the skin is very tough and very thick. It was over 1/4 inch thick on this fish.
So the skin or the scales?
The skin.
Interesting.
It's like a cartilage
Yeah.
shell. It's like an exoskeleton. It isn't, and it is a bonefish. It's just this incredibly tough outer shell. And then you get through that, and you got to butcher it with some force. Then you get into a very unusual muscle structure, totally different from any other fish. And a digestive system that you also had, the likes of which you've never seen before. And a stench that is beyond description. Again, it's hard to verbalize smell. It's hard to describe smell. But this was disgusting. I am not a queasy fella. This was not good. at all. And that smell had a hint of flavoring in the meat. And it made it impossible to eat.
Because you'd already been tainted by that smell.
Karen thought it was delicious. You know, I ate it, and the consistency of the meat was more towards like a prawn than fish meat. Very firm. Really quite delicious if it weren't for that smell that lingered in my nostrils from the butchering. My God, I just couldn't eat it. I couldn't enjoy it. So I never taken another one.
But you have seen a few other ones.
Many, every year. But they usually just vary in sizes from that size up to maybe 4 or 5 times that size, which would be like maybe 3 feet in length. You know, so volume-wise, it would be like 4 or 5 times the size of the little one.
Yeah.
But this year, there was the Big Daddy. I was out with Kate.
Yes.
We met Kate when we took the boat home.
Yes.
And this Mola swam right next to our boat, like lazily swimming by, looking up at us with its friendly eye. Very friendly, inquisitive, curious. It was like you could see that this creature's curious. What is this boat? What are these creatures up on that boat? It's such a positive experience encountering a Mola. But at first, when you see that gray shadow come gliding, there's an instant hit of panic.
Yeah.
Instant. Because it's so foreign. The element is foreign. Let's face it, the ocean will kill you if something goes wrong.
Yeah.
So when you see something unusual like that, it can't help but induce a panic reaction.
And the Big Daddy, how big was this fish?
It was enormous. It was like 8 feet by 6 feet or something like that.
Just an enormous shape comes under the boat.
An enormous plate of cartilage-shelled Mola Mola.
That's a giant volume as well, right? Like you think it's like a
Giant
square almost.
volume.
That must have been incredible.
Yeah, it was. It's I've never seen anything like it, and it's always a good year when you can come home and say, "Yeah, I've been on the water for 40 years. I ain't never seen anything like it."
Yeah. But yeah, every year I fish with you, and every year things happen that you're always like, I've never seen that before.
Yeah,
So that's a great
that's
thing.
what the ocean has.
Yeah,
It has things that you've never seen before.
for sure.
It always does.
I've got one other question about a story which you've told me before. About a resident, some would almost say a pet skate.
Yeah.
So what is a skate, first of all?
Yeah, skate is a ray type of fish. It's a cartilage fish.
Okay.
It's related to sharks and rays and a few other groups of fish. So it has really wide delta-shaped wings and a very long tail.
Okay.
And a very long pointed snout. Very handsome fish. Its mouth sits on the underside of its head.
Oh.
And it eats from the ocean floor.
Okay.
It like corrals things like crabs and munches them up from up above.
Mm-hmm.
It comes in on the crab, lays down on it, and like chomps it to death. Other such creatures, also fish. And what happens is that on Greenwood Cove, where I fish for crab, that's where I set my crab rings. And that it has fish carcasses for bait. And one year I was out with the park ranger, who, by the way, declared my great white basking shark.
Yes.
He and I were out fishing for crab. Many years later. That shark never came between us. We've always been good friends. He later became a game warden, by the way. So we're out fishing for crab, and he's pulling off the crab, one of the crab rings, and it won't budge. She says, "Oh no, this is stuck in the bottom." I said, "What could it be stuck on? There's nothing on the bottom to be stuck on." "Yeah, well, it's stuck on the bottom, all right." And then I see a slight pump. I said, "No, it's not stuck on the bottom. You have a fish in there." So I said, "Just pull a little harder." So he pulls a little harder, and then it starts undulating. And then he pulls up, and it's a skate that gotten stuck in the ropes that pulls the rings up.
Yes.
That's 4 ropes.
Yeah.
It had gotten in on top of the bait and was munching away of the bait. Then we pull up and it turns into a basket. It can only propel forwards. It propels forwards, gets its long pointy snout stuck in the mesh of the crab ring, and its 2 wing-like fins perfectly lodged between the pull-up ropes. Can't go forward, can't go backwards. So now it gets up to the surface and it's a skate. And we've never seen a skate before. And it was about, I'd say, probably 4 or 5 feet from snout to tail.
Okay, and that's that long, thin tail.
Yeah, and so the body size was like the area of this table, maybe a little bit more.
So what? That's like 3 foot, maybe square.
Yeah,
Wow, pretty big.
pretty big. But they're flat fish, you know. Probably weighed like 40 pounds, something like that, 30, 40 pounds.
Yeah.
And so we'd look at it and feel the skin a little bit and say hello, and then we untangle it and get it out of there. Fine, it's gone. The following year, or maybe 2 years go by, I'm not sure. Same scenario, fishing for crab in the same place, in the same little cove, and with a different person. And we pull up and it's stuck on the bottom. I said, "It's the skate." And we pull up, it's the exact same thing. Only this time the skate is like from wing to wing, it's more like 4.5 feet. And from nose to tail, it's more like 5.5 feet. It's much bigger. Is it the same fish? I don't know, but I've never seen a skate before. I've fished it for many years. This could easily be the same fish. And we get it untangled. It's a little bit harder to untangle this time. And we let it go. And then a couple of years go by, and this was last year.
So what? 2022.
2022.
Yeah.
And I forget who was out with me, but that person took videos.
Oh, okay.
There's videos of this.
We should try and find these videos.
Oh, I know who it was. It's Abel Garvin.
Okay.
Abel Garvin runs a food truck out of Neuer Harbor called Smoke on the Water. He's there on Saturdays and Sundays
Right. Well, that's
with his friend Phoenix. They're both high school kids. So you can go and hunt him down in Neuer Harbor, Smoke on the Water.
Okay.
I hear good things about that food truck. And then you can ask him about the skate.
Abel, we're coming for you.
Now, this skate had gotten itself really seriously lodged in among the ropes of the crab trap.
Again.
Because it was humongous. It was like 8 feet from snout to tail. It weighed, we gauged that it weighed about 100 pounds. We couldn't, I mean, it was just like spectacular.
And how many years is this after the last time you'd seen them?
A few.
A few. So it's been quite some time since your first encounter.
Yeah, it's been probably 7, 8 years since the very first encounter. And it is a seriously large animal. And now we get to really see the structure of a full-grown specimen of this species. It is so thorny that, and the thorns are so sharp that, you know, I feel the surface of the skin and I feel that it's thorny, but I didn't notice that I had lacerated myself on its skin.
Really?
You know how water dulls pain,
Yeah. And also soften skin a little bit too.
and these thorns were seriously sharp. Some of them was this long.
Wow. Like 2 inches long.
Those were clearly visible, right? And
Yeah.
you stay away from those, and especially on the tail, at the root of the tail, it had a whole series of thorns. But towards the head, the thorns were really tiny, and invisible basically. But my hands felt them. So we tried to free it, and we couldn't. So we brought it into the boat, in over the side, heave ho, get it in, and we tried to free it in the boat. Still couldn't do it, so we had to cut lines.
Really?
Yeah, to free it, to get it back in the water. But we got to see it. We got to see the top side. We got to see the underside. We got to see it all the way through.
Amazing.
Yep. Big fish.
Oh,
Skate.
wow. Can only imagine if you have another encounter, it's going to get more hectic.
Yeah, there was one, a new one in a crab trap this year, tiny. It got out before, just as we got it up to the surface, it got out of the crab trap.
Okay.
It was tiny. It was maybe 1.5 by maybe 2 feet by 1.5 thereabouts.
So it seems like you have a clue already from experience about what's coming in the next few years.
Yeah, I think that we're gonna have more skate encounters.
So it seems like that's like a good moment to round this conversation of ours off.
Yeah, maybe.
Thank you again. Unless there's something else about like fishing nuances or something like a burning thing that you feel like you should have mentioned that we didn't cover today.
Oh, without a doubt there is, but that's probably always the case.
Yeah.
There will always be something that should have been said, but shit, that's for another day.
Yeah.
Another time.
We can get you back at some point, I'm sure. I know where you live. Well, thank you, Ejler. Amazing. Thank you for sharing all of your knowledge so patiently and thoroughly. It was so useful. I mean, I've been listening to your advice on the water in the moment for a number of years now, and to have that broken down was incredibly helpful even for me, and I get to hear you demonstrate in person. So
yeah, good.
Fantastic. Yeah.
I hope it's useful for the listeners and the watchers out there, and who are interested in getting a little bit more inside knowledge in what goes on between the surface of the ocean and the bottom of the floor. Because making your mind travel with your hook down to the bottom of the ocean, to me, that's one of the biggest adventures. And it takes a lot of doing to get that insight. But I very much enjoy that expanded consciousness about what is my hook doing down at the bottom of the floor, and what am I doing to lure the fish to bite. Without that consciousness, I don't think I would be that good of a fisherman. And with that consciousness, I sometimes stump my fishing companions because I catch.
Yes. Sometimes it's a mystery to me.
Yes, I know.
But now we understand more about the complexities of what's going on as to why. So next time I don't have nearly as many excuses.
No, you don't.
Well, thank you again. And I look forward to getting you on to talk about some other moments of wisdom around here.
Very well. Until then.
Okay, ladies and gents, that's another episode done and dusted. Or I guess I should say recorded in the logbook, if I was being appropriate to a marine situation. I want to say thanks again to Ejler for being Ejler, for being an endless source of entertainment and information. And also, thanks again to everyone who's listening. You made it to the end. So, congrats and huzzah. If you're enjoying this episode and you like the podcast in general, then please don't forget to tell folks about it, or write a nice review, or tell a friend. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. And until next time.